Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Emerson and my pronouns are they, them. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a fabric collage using scraps and slow stitching. So here are some of the ones I've made already as examples, but we're going to be making a different one today because I don't like to plan anything ahead of time. So it'll be a surprise for you and for me. The whole process is so intuitive for me. I usually just start with a color or maybe a specific fabric or even just an idea, and I build from there pretty much by trial and error to see what I like. It's all about layers. Layers of scrap fabric, stitching, appliques, buttons, sequins, ribbons, beads, felt, anything you can sew onto fabric, you can add to your piece. I love that this craft is so versatile. You can make it any size that you want, any shape. Like the first one I did a rectangle and this one I did more of a circle. Any palette that you want to use, any aesthetic that you like, you can all make it with fabric and thread and some little doodads. Slow stitching is also known for being very meditative and therapeutic, and I completely agree with this. It's definitely the most relaxing craft / interest that I have, because I feel like if I follow my intuition, the end product always turns out looking good. I'm also making creative decisions the whole time, as opposed to planning it out and just following the steps, which helps keep my anxious mind focused on something productive rather than worrying for no reason. But anyway, let's get started with this project. We're going to start off with some supplies. I am using a piece of muslin that I had literally just left over from college. I had some unfinished pattern pieces, so I'm cutting that up and using a piece of that. Next, you will need some pins and needles and some sewing scissors or little snippers. Sewing scissors I recommend. I was struggling with just those little scissors. And this is my magnetic pin cushion. That's probably one of my favorite sewing supplies. You'll need embroidery thread in a variety of different colors. And, of course, you'll need fabric. Mostly scraps, but I also pulled out a couple of different fabrics that I was just really feeling. I'm thinking about turning the piece I make today into a little pouch, so I'm cutting the fabric to be long enough to sew in the zipper, but you can make your base fabric as big or small as you want. With wovens like this muslin, I always recommend tearing it instead of cutting it. Tearing the fabric gives it a more accurate shape, but you'll want to make sure to tug opposite corners a bit to even the threads out of the fabric. Just like this. And you can of course true it up to an L square and iron it and make it really good and perfect, but we're not going to be that particular. I also like to do this because it leaves the raw frayed edge, which I think adds a lot of texture to the piece and just makes it look and feel more interesting. So I do this for the base piece and also for any other rectangles or squares of fabric that are going on the piece. Don't forget to pull off any loose threads. You can also cut them if you need to. And once we have our base fabric ready, we can really get started here. I always start simple, usually just by picking one single fabric that inspires me. I really wanted to use this green floral one, but I just couldn't find enough scraps to go with it, and I got inspired instead by this piece that I found. It was just in a bag of scraps that I picked up at a thrift store recently, and I think it is so beautiful. I love the design, the color blue, so I'll definitely be using that. And as you can see, I started to find different blue, green, natural, neutral colors to kind of go with it. So after digging around, these are the fabrics I found that coordinate with that original piece with the bird on it. Most of these I end up using, but some I don't, and that's totally fine because, like I said earlier, this whole thing is trial and error. This floral piece with the black background I'm showing because I want to cut out some of these flowers and use them as appliques on my piece. Once I've gathered enough little pieces of fabric, it is time to cut them up and sew them together. For the sewing, you can either just hold it in your hands, which is what I do, or use an embroidery hoop if that is easier. If I plan on leaving it in the embroidery hoop, then I would just use the hoop. Then I cut up and tear the fabric into little pieces so that I can start putting it together on our background fabric. Right away I really liked this lightweight denim, so I put that on the side there. So starting with that denim piece, we are putting together our collage, trying out different pieces in different places, moving stuff around. I really let myself take my time with this step because it's just all about what I like in the moment as I'm putting the fabric pieces together. Nothing has been planned and nothing is set in stone. Even if I've already sewn it to the piece, I can decide to seam rip it and re-sew it or put something else there. So there's not much anxiety involved with creating this type of art as opposed to like drawing for me, which doesn't always turn out how I want it to look. I like to use simple embroidery techniques like the running stitch and back stitch. You really don't need to know any kind of fancy stitches to get started. At some point I'll probably incorporate more complex stitches into my work, but it's really just fun and keeps it, low anxiety, and the possibilities are pretty much limitless with just knowing the basic like running stitch. Honestly, you don't even need to knot the thread like I did in the beginning, because once you start stitching, it'll pretty much hold itself down, and you can just secure it by doing a stitch over top of the tail of the thread in the back. It's kind of an amateur thing to do, but I have bad anxiety, so I'll probably just always be knotting my things for just that extra level of feeling better that it's gonna stay together. So here I am sewing the flower appliques that I cut out onto the piece of denim, and most of my hand sewing is done like this, in my lap, hunched by my desk with my legs crossed. But to be fair, that's how I am most of the time when I'm doing anything creative, and that's what's great about this project, that you can just sit and do it in your lap. You could sit on the couch and watch TV and do it. You can take it to the park or whatever. A way to get some variation and interest in your piece too is by using not only different colors of embroidery floss, but different number of strands. So right here I'm only using 2 strands of white, and that gives a completely different look from using a full 6-strand embroidery thread. So depending on how bold you want it to look, you can use different size stitches and different size thread. And if you're not sure what colors of thread to use, I definitely recommend, you can match it to the fabric like I am here, or you can pick up a really subtle accent color within the fabric and use that as your main color, which I do shortly with the yellow. You can use black on white fabric to make it stand out. So I will just leave you here for now to enjoy me sewing in fast speed, and I will catch up with you later. The next step after you have everything laid out and sewn down is to add in the embellishments like buttons and beads. And that's what I'm showing here, is that I want to add little beads onto my little flower appliques. I think it would look so cute. Bring out the buttons. I don't know why I thought that would sound so funny. Here's my buttons. These are actually just some of them. These are the cooler ones. I also have just like a big box of less cool ones. And of course I forgot the ribbon and trims and stuff that I'm going to be using a few of these pieces onto my artwork. Here I am just deciding which buttons I want to add. I'm not putting them anywhere specific, just putting them against the piece so I can see if they go and if I want to actually add them or not. And then I'll go in and get rid of a few and decide what the final buttons are and their final placement on the fabric. Ooh, but first I found this ribbon that I like, and I'm gonna cut the edges kind of like a banner, I guess, and use the printed pattern on here, or rather the negative space of the printed pattern, like that, to sew it in. Oh, this is my favorite part of the whole piece that I made today, I think. And then I decided to sign my name, but like make it a focal point of the piece. So I'm gonna sign it right on this piece of brown fabric. Oh, and she's done, beauty. Let me take you in for a closer look at all of the little details. Starting up at the top corner, we have some fabric layered and some embroidery. The color scheme was kind of blue, pink, brown, a little bit of green, a little bit of lavender. Here's a piece of fabric ribbon that I accidentally sewed on crooked, so I just added these little sequins underneath it instead of redoing it. I made it accent to the piece. And then here are these really pretty buttons, this faceted one and this metal one. And of course I have to sign my pieces, and I thought maybe to make this a more focal point in this really cute brown fabric with the X's around it and the little gold piece on the side, and underneath that the little green and blue strip with green embroidery. This part's my favorite. It's this little ribbon that I embroidered over, and in this blue rectangle with the yellow and brown embroidery, a little maroon button, a flower applique with little French knots in the middle. I did want to use beads, but just decided French knots would be easier and also just as cute. So moving over, the big piece I started with was this denim, and on top of that I added this really cute metal upcycled button and these flower appliques that I cut out of fabric, and added the little French knots on that one. Below that I've got that same fabric that I cut the appliques out of, just a piece of it with some black embroidery and pink embroidery next to that. This beautiful brown fabric, probably one of my favorites, and the brown button, gold sequins, and this floral piece on the bottom with the black outline. I just love how this turned out. I love the combination of textures and colors, adding the different layers with the ribbons and appliques and then the buttons and stuff on top. It is just so fun, and no matter, even if I use like all these same fabrics again, I will make a piece completely different from this. And that is what is so fun about slow stitching and fabric collage. So that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some inspiration or ideas from this. And definitely look out for more videos from me on textile art and slow stitching. I had a lot of fun with this project and definitely want to do more in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!